Griffin Jansen didn't expect his daughter's meltdown in the cereal aisle to lead to a life-changing moment, but then again, nothing in his life had gone to plan lately. "Brielle, we're not getting the rainbow marshmallow cereal." "It's got more sugar than your Halloween stash," Griffin said, crouching beside his 6-year-old, who was now sitting cross-legged on the tile floor of the grocery store, pouting like her world had ended. "But we always got it with Mom," she whispered, voice tight. Griffin winced. It had only been a year since his ex-wife left, taking her dreams of a fashion career to Paris and leaving him with full custody. He ran a hand through his messy dark hair and glanced around, trying not to look like a dad on the verge of collapse. That's when he saw her. The woman standing at the end of the aisle looked like she didn't belong there. Her posture was stiff, her expression blank, and she was staring at a can of soup like it had just insulted her. She wore a sleek black blazer over a silk blouse, heels way too expensive for this grocery store, and her glossy brown hair was pulled into a tight bun that had clearly survived a long day. And even though she looked like she had it all together, her eyes were red. Griffin didn't think he just acted. "Hey, Brielle," he said quietly, "you can grab the cereal just this once." Her face lit up like Christmas morning and she ran to the shelf. Griffin left the cart and walked toward the woman, suddenly aware of the grease stain on his sleeve from fixing the sink that morning. "Rough day?" he asked gently, stopping beside her. She blinked, startled, then gave a short, humorless laugh. "You could say that. I'm Griffin," he offered, nodding toward the cereal aisle. "That's my daughter, Brielle. She just won a very messy battle over sugar." The woman looked over and something in her face softened. "She's adorable. Thanks." He hesitated, then added, "You look like you want to scream into a pillow or throw that can of soup across the store." She let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Honestly, both want to talk about it. Or I can just stand here and pretend we're old friends while you pretend you're not about to cry in public." That made her smile, not a fake corporate smile, but a real one. "I'm Wren Daniels." They stood there, between shelves of canned peas and instant noodles, talking like they hadn't just met. She didn't tell him what had gone wrong in her day, and he didn't ask. But he made her laugh twice, and when Brielle came running up and handed her a sticker from the cereal box, Wren crouched down and thanked her like it was the most precious gift in the world. Griffin didn't know who she was. He didn't know that Wren Daniels was the CEO of one of the most powerful real estate development firms in the city. He didn't know she'd just come from a boardroom war where her leadership had been questioned for the 100th time just because she was a woman. He didn't know she'd fired her assistant for leaking confidential files, or that she'd been called too emotional for defending her company's ethical standards. All he saw was a woman who looked like she needed someone to remind her that she was human. "I don't usually do this," she said as he walked her to her car, "but would you want to get coffee sometime?" Griffin blinked. "You're asking me out," she laughed. "That was subtle, huh? Yeah, I mean sure, yeah, definitely. I'd like that, tomorrow morning. I work construction during the day, but I can meet you before the site opens. Around 7 it is." She glanced down, "And thank you for not asking questions. I needed that." "I get it," he said softly. "Sometimes it's not about fixing anything. Just being there." She looked at him for a long moment, then she smiled, warmer this time. "See you in the morning, Griffin." He watched her drive away in a sleek black car that looked completely out of place in the worn parking lot, but he didn't think much of it. The next morning, he shaved for the first time in a week. They met at a small bakery downtown. Wren was already waiting, dressed down this time in jeans and a soft sweater, hair loose around her face. She looked younger, lighter. "You're early," he said, sitting down across from her. "You're worth it," she replied without missing a beat. They talked for an hour, about Brielle, about his work, about nothing and everything. Wren didn't talk about her job and Griffin didn't ask. He figured she worked in finance or something, maybe marketing. He didn't care. What mattered was the way she looked at him when he talked about building things with his hands, the way she asked about Brielle like it mattered to her, the way she actually listened. "You're different," she said as they walked down the street afterward. "Good different or weird different?" "Both," he grinned. "I'll take it." She touched his arm just briefly. "I'm glad I met you, Griffin." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Me too. They started meeting every few days, always early in the morning, always before his shift. Sometimes she brought him coffee. Sometimes he brought her muffins. Once she brought Brielle a tiny pink hard hat, and Griffin wasn't sure who smiled more, Wren or his daughter, but something shifted one morning when Wren's driver pulled up early to pick her up. Griffin watched as she got into a sleek black town car, the driver in a suit, and something clicked. "Wait," he asked the next day, "you have a driver?" She hesitated. "Yeah, you a lawyer or something?" Her eyes met his. "Not exactly. You live in the city." "I live in the penthouse of the Daniels Tower downtown." He stopped walking. "Wait, Daniels Tower, as in I built it, my company did." She looked at him carefully. "I'm the CEO of Daniels and Cross." Griffin stared at her. "You're that Wren Daniels," she nodded slowly. "Still want coffee?" He didn't say anything for a long beat, then he laughed, shaking his head, stunned. "This whole time I thought you were just someone who liked blueberry muffins and bad coffee." "I do," she said quietly. "But I'm also someone who's falling for you." He looked at her, really looked at her, and then he grinned. "Well," he said, "I guess that makes two of us." The first time Wren stepped into Griffin's world, it wasn't in heels or behind the tinted windows of a town car, it was in muddy boots, holding a plastic container of homemade macaroni and cheese, standing on the edge of a construction site that smelled of pine and fresh cement. "I brought lunch," she said, lifting the container like a white flag. "Don't laugh. I used actual cheese this time." Griffin glanced up from the scaffolding, the sun catching the sweat on his neck, and raised both brows. "You cooked, don't sound so doubtful. I'm just saying, last week you tried to microwave soup in a metal bowl. That was one time." He climbed down with practiced ease, brushing dust from his shirt as he reached her. "You didn't have to bring this." "I usually eat in the truck. I wanted to see you in your element." "You mean sweaty and covered in sawdust?" "I mean building something that matters." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he opened the container and took a bite, then looked up at her with mock surprise. "Okay, this is actually edible." "Wow, high praise from a man who once fed me a gas station sandwich. That was survival, not cuisine." She laughed, then glanced at the half-framed house behind him. "This is the one for the family with the twins, right?" Griffin nodded. "Yeah." They've been living in a one-bedroom apartment for 3 years. This'll be their first real place. Wren's expression shifted. "I spent 2 months arguing for affordable housing units in our last project. The board said it would drag down property value. They ever meet people like the ones moving into this house?" "No, that's the problem." Griffin leaned against the toolbox. "Why do you stay in it?" "That kind of fight every day. Because if I don't show up, they'll replace me with someone who doesn't care at all." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just full. Then Griffin said, "You want to see what real progress looks like?" She followed him through the frame, ducking under beams, stepping over wires. He pointed out where the kids' room would be, how the windows were placed to catch the morning light, how the insulation was eco-friendly because the family had a son with asthma. By the time they stepped back outside, her expression had softened into something unreadable. "You ever think about doing this full-time?" she asked. "Building houses?" "No, making people feel like they're seen." He gave a short laugh. "I'm a contractor, not a therapist. You're more than that." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen and frowned. "It's Brielle's school." Wren stepped back instinctively. "Go, I'll clean up lunch." When he returned an hour later, Wren was still there, sitting on the tailgate of his truck, legs swinging like a teenager. She looked up as he approached. "Everything okay?" Her bus got delayed. "She was worried I wasn't going to be there." Was she? Crying. But she stopped when I showed up with her favorite granola bar. Wren smiled faintly. "You're a good dad. Trying to be." He sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. After a long moment, she asked, "You ever think about what your life would be like if things had gone differently?" "I used to. Not so much now. Life doesn't wait around for you to catch up." She looked out at the horizon. "I've been thinking about stepping back." He turned toward her. "From the company, not completely, just shifting things. Letting someone else handle the day-to-day. I don't even know what my house looks like in the afternoon light." "Sounds like you've already made the decision." "I haven't told anyone yet." "Why me?" Because you don't want anything from me, he considered that. Is that rare for you? Very. They sat in silence, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. Then Griffin said, You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't running a company? She tilted her head. Open a bookstore, the kind with mismatched chairs and terrible coffee. He grinned. You'd be terrible at it. Excuse me. You'd spend all your time organizing the shelves alphabetically and arguing with teenagers about Dostoevsky. Okay, fair. But you'd be happy. Her smile faded into something more thoughtful. I think I would. That night, Griffin found a drawing on the fridge. Brielle had sketched a woman with long brown hair handing her a book. When he asked who it was, she said, That's Miss Wren. She reads stories like Mama used to. The next morning, Wren didn't show up for coffee. He waited outside the bakery for 20 minutes, then another 10. No call, no explanation. By the time he drove to the site, he'd convinced himself something must have come up. Board meeting, emergency, billionaire things, but that night there was a package on his doorstep, no note. No return address. Inside was a single first edition of The Little Prince. And tucked inside its pages, a receipt for a bookstore lease in her name. He stared at the paper for a long time. Then he picked up the phone. The bell above the bookstore door gave a soft jingle as Griffin pushed it open, Brielle's tiny fingers wrapped tightly around his. The space was still mostly empty, bare walls, exposed brick, a few dusty shelves, but sunlight poured through the tall windows like it was meant to be there. In the center of the room stood Wren, her back to them, speaking with a contractor about floor finishes. She turned as they entered, her eyes landing on Griffin first, then dropping to Brielle. The tension in her shoulders dissolved, and for a moment she looked like someone who had just been given permission to breathe again. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, keeping her voice low. I wasn't sure either, Griffin replied. But then Brielle found the lease you left inside the book. She asked me why you'd buy a store if you weren't going to open it. Wren gave a small nod. I bought it because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. About building something that matters. You disappeared, Wren. I know. No message, no explanation. I needed time to figure out what I was doing. I couldn't keep showing up in your life like I didn't have a 100-pound secret strapped to my back. You deserved more than half answers. Brielle tugged on Griffin's hand and whispered, Is this where the books will go? Wren crouched down beside her and pointed toward the far wall. Right there. And that corner's going to have beanbags and fairy lights. You'll be able to read anything you want, even the big books, especially the big books. Brielle beamed and wandered off to explore, leaving Wren and Griffin in the middle of the unfinished store, the smell of sawdust still clinging to the air. I didn't come here to hear excuses, Griffin said, folding his arms. I'm not offering any, I'm just standing here telling you the truth. He studied her face, noting the faint smudge of paint near her elbow, the rolled sleeves of her blouse, the tired eyes that still managed to shine. Are you walking away from your company? No, but I'm restructuring. I've promoted someone to handle daily operations. I'll still be involved, but I won't let it consume me anymore. She hesitated. And I'm opening this place because I need something of my own, something real. He glanced around. You know, running a bookstore isn't glamorous, right? I'm not doing it for glamour. I'm doing it because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only care about power plays and profit margins. I want to be around people who care about stories. Stories don't pay the bills. Neither did my job, at least not the way I was living it. Griffin looked away, jaw tight. You lied to me. Every day we had coffee, every time you showed up, you let me think you were someone else. I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. Same thing. It wasn't because I didn't trust you. It was because I didn't trust myself. Every time I start to care about someone, I lose them or they leave. I didn't want to watch it happen again. He leaned against the nearest shelf, arms still crossed. So what now, Wren? You open the shop, play bookseller, and what? Hope I forget the part where you disappeared without a word. I don't want you to forget. I want you to remember that I came back. Brielle's voice echoed from the back. Daddy. There's a ladder. Griffin pushed off the shelf and started walking toward her, then stopped and turned back. I'm not looking for someone to drop in when it's convenient. Brielle's had enough of that already. I'm not going anywhere. You said that once already. Wren's voice caught. I didn't know how to stay then, but I do now. Later that week, Wren showed up at the construction site again, but this time not with food. She stood next to Griffin's truck, holding a clipboard and wearing sneakers instead of heels. "I want to sponsor a build," she said before he could even greet her. "Through the bookstore. A percentage of sales every month will go toward funding one project. You choose the family." Griffin blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely. I already filed the paperwork with the nonprofit you work with. I also hired 2 part-time employees for the store. One of them is a teenager who told me she's never read a book that felt like it was written for her. I gave her 3. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes narrowing. "You're not trying to fix this with money, are you?" "No, I'm trying to fix it with action." He studied her face, not for polish or pretense, but for proof. There was no trace of the woman who used to measure her value in market shares. Only the one who had sat beside him in the bakery, genuinely curious about how houses were built. "You're really doing it," he said slowly. "You're changing your whole life." "I already started. I just needed you to see it." The following weekend, Wren invited Griffin and Brielle to the still unfinished bookstore. She had set up a picnic on the floor, grapes, cheese, and lemonade in paper cups. They sat cross-legged on the hardwood, surrounded by boxes of donated books and shelves waiting to be filled. Brielle picked up a copy of Charlotte's Web and asked Wren to read it aloud. As her voice carried through the empty space, Griffin leaned back on his hands and watched them, his daughter curled up against Wren's side, Wren's voice steady and warm. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a private jet or a rooftop dinner with live music. It was better. It was ordinary in the most extraordinary way. When the story ended, Brielle looked up and said, "Can we live here?" Griffin chuckled. "No beds, Peanut." Wren met his eyes. "But maybe we can build something else, something that lasts." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for one of the lemonade cups and clinked it gently against hers. "To stories," he said. "To second chances," she replied. They both drank, the silence between them no longer heavy but full of promise. Rain swept across the bookstore windows in silvery sheets, the kind of spring storm that made the world feel quieter. Inside, the newly finished shelves were lined with worn spines and fresh covers, the air scented with wood varnish and the faint citrus of a lit candle near the register. Wren adjusted a crooked bookend shaped like a fox, then stepped back to make sure the display looked inviting. She didn't hear Griffin come in until the door clicked closed behind him. "You left your phone at the site," he said, holding it out. She took it with a faint laugh. "I've been running on autopilot all day." "Looks like you've been running on more than that." He glanced around. "This place looks alive." "It is," she said softly. "It finally feels like mine." Griffin leaned on the front counter, watching her. "You opening tomorrow?" "Grand opening's Saturday. We're doing a read aloud marathon for the kids and offering free lemonade. I hired a local artist to paint a mural in the back room. It's going to be a tree with open books for leaves." He nodded slowly. "People are going to feel something when they walk in here." "I hope so." Brielle's already picked out 3 books she wants to read at the event. She's been practicing out loud in her room like she's got stage fright. She asked me last week if I'd sit beside her while she reads. I said I'd be honored. Griffin's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across it. "You're really in this," he said. "I don't know how to do anything halfway." He hesitated. "Neither do I, which is why I want to talk to you about something." Wren folded her arms, bracing herself. "Okay. I got offered a lead position on a long-term project out of town. It's a full development build, community housing, eco-certified materials, the whole deal. Good pay, good cause," her breath caught. "Where?" "Upstate, about an hour-and-a-half drive. It'd be 6 months on and off. I'd be gone during the week, back on weekends." Her voice was quiet. "You're considering it?" "I am, because it's the kind of work I always wanted to do, but I'm also thinking about what I'd be leaving behind." Wren walked to the window, watching the rivulets of rain streak down the glass. "And what do you see when you look at what's here?" "I see a woman who changed the way I think about everything, who stopped seeing herself as a name on a building and started seeing herself as a person who makes things better." She turned toward him. "I see a man who builds more than houses." "You build people, Griffin. You built me." He crossed the room slowly, stopping just short of her. "If I take this job, I want to know it won't undo us. I don't want you to turn it down because of me." I want to take it because of you. Because you reminded me that I'm allowed to want more, she searched his face. Then say yes. You sure? I'm sure, she said, but I expect postcards and video calls for Brielle's story nights. Deal, and I'll be back every weekend. You, me, and Brielle will make it work. Wren smiled, not the practiced kind she used in boardrooms, but the one that made her eyes shine. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just a kind stranger in the cereal aisle. And I thought you were someone who cried over soup. They both laughed, the sound filling the room like sunlight. That Saturday, the bookstore opened its doors for the first time. Children sprawled on beanbags with picture books, parents sipped lemonade and browsed the shelves. And Brielle, in a yellow jumper and pigtails, sat proudly on a little wooden stool at the front of the room, reading aloud to a captive audience. Griffin stood at the back, arms folded, watching her. He felt someone step beside him and turned to find Wren there, her hand brushing his. She's got your focus, she said softly. She's got your heart, he replied. After the reading, Wren brought out a cake decorated like a stack of books. Brielle squealed when she saw her name on the top one. A photographer from the local paper asked for a photo, and they posed together. Wren in the center, Griffin on one side, Brielle clinging to both. Later, as the crowd thinned and the shop quieted, Wren led Griffin to the back room where the mural had just been finished. The tree stretched across the wall, its branches arching wide, each leaf shaped like an open book. In the center, painted in sweeping gold letters, it read, "Where New Stories Begin." It's beautiful, Griffin said. I had them add something yesterday, she murmured, pointing to the trunk. Etched into the bark was a carving, G plus W plus B. He stared at it for a long moment. That's us. It is. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small velvet ring box. Wren froze, her breath catching. It's not flashy, he said. No diamonds the size of boulders. Just something simple. Because I don't need grandeur. I just want you, and I want Brielle to have a life where love doesn't walk away. She opened the box slowly. Inside was a delicate gold ring with a single sapphire, deep and quiet like the way she smiled when she was truly seen. I love you, he said. Not the CEO, not the woman who owns buildings, just you, her voice trembled. I've waited my whole life for someone to say that. Say yes, Wren. She didn't hesitate. Yes. They kissed in the quiet of the back room, surrounded by stories and soft lamplight, the rain easing outside into sunlight. Weeks later, they were married in the bookstore, surrounded by close friends, shelves brimming with books, and a hand-painted sign that read, Once upon a time, they built a life together. And in the front row, Brielle sat grinning with her legs swinging, holding a bouquet of daisies and a copy of her favorite book. She already knew how the story ended, with love, with home, with forever. The bookstore had been open for 3 months when the unexpected happened. A letter arrived, hand-delivered in a dark blue envelope with gold-embossed initials D and C. Wren turned it over twice before opening it, her fingers pausing just slightly on the flap. She hadn't seen those initials since she'd stepped away from her executive chair. Griffin was outside on the patio with Brielle, helping her paint an old birdhouse. The sound of her laughter floated through the open windows, grounding Wren as she unfolded the letter. She read it once. Then again, when Griffin came in, wiping his hands on a rag, he stopped short at the look on her face. You okay? She nodded slowly. That was from my board. The offer I made to restructure the company to split the commercial division and divest from the luxury developments we never believed in it passed. By a narrow vote. Griffin leaned on the doorframe. That's what you wanted. It is. But they want me back. Not full-time, just as a strategic advisor. Monthly input, board presence. They said the shift in company values was inspired by me. He crossed the room and took the letter from her hand, scanning it. You'd go back. I don't know. I love the store. I love what we've built here. But if I go back in even a limited role, I can make sure they stay on course, that they keep building things that actually matter. He looked at her for a long moment. Do it. You don't need my permission, but if you want my support, you've got it. She inhaled slowly. There's a catch. The meetings are in the city. I'd have to commute twice a month. Then we'll figure it out. I'll take Brielle those days. We'll make pancakes and probably burn half of them. She likes them burnt, Wren said softly. I know. Just like you like your coffee too strong and your books dog-eared. Her eyes welled, but she blinked them clear. I didn't expect you to be this calm. Wren, you're not going back to be who you were. You're going back to make sure no one else forgets who you became. That's different. The next morning, Wren sat down with Brielle at the kitchen table and explained everything in careful words. Brielle listened, swinging her feet under the chair, her expression thoughtful. Will you still read with me at night? She asked. Every night I'm home. And on the nights I'm not, I'll call. We'll read over the phone. You can even read to me. Brielle considered this, then reached for a crayon and began drawing. When she was done, she handed Wren a picture of the bookstore with 3 stick figures inside, all holding books. This is us, she said. We're a story now. Wren kissed her forehead. We always were. 2 weeks later, Wren returned to the city for her first board meeting. She wore flats instead of heels, and she carried a canvas tote instead of a designer bag. When she walked into the glass-walled conference room, the men and women around the table straightened. Some were surprised. Others were relieved. She didn't take her old seat at the head of the table. Instead, she chose one in the middle. And when she spoke, it wasn't with the clipped efficiency they remembered. It was with conviction. She advocated for a new partnership with a nonprofit focused on sustainable housing. She pushed for transparency in future development bids. She reminded them that buildings were nothing without the lives inside them. When the meeting ended, a few colleagues approached her, quietly expressing admiration. One of them, a former rival, shook her hand and said, "You're not the same." She smiled. That's the point. Back in town, Griffin was waiting on the front steps of the bookstore, Brielle asleep on his shoulder. Wren crouched beside them, brushing a curl from her daughter's face. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. Then we're celebrating. That night, they hosted a small dinner in the store's reading nook. String lights glowed across the ceiling beams, and a few close friends from the community joined them. Griffin grilled in the alley behind the store, and Wren opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving. As the evening winded down, Griffin stood and tapped the side of his glass. I've got something to say, he began. This place, this woman, none of it came easy, but the best things never do. Wren, you've shown me what courage looks like. You've reminded me that building something real takes more than wood and nails. It takes heart. And you've got more heart than anyone I've ever met. Wren looked at him, the glow of the lights catching the tears on her cheeks. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key. This is for the house I've been building, the one upstate. It's almost done. I had the walls painted the same shade as the bookstore. I built a room for Brielle with shelves from floor to ceiling. Wren stared at the key, her breath catching. I want weekends to feel like home. I want you and Brielle there. I want us there, together. She took the key, held it against her chest. Griffin Jansen, you've already built my home. Wherever you are, that's where I belong. They kissed slowly, the kind of kiss that unraveled the past and stitched a future in its place. A year later, the bookstore flourished. Wren continued her advisor role with the development firm, helping steer it toward projects that prioritized people over profit. She split her time between the city and their new home in the hills, where Griffin and Brielle planted fruit trees and hosted Sunday picnics. Brielle's reading nook became the heart of the store, where she led story time every Saturday morning, usually with her parents sitting nearby, holding hands. The town accepted Wren not as the CEO who had once disappeared behind glass towers, but as the woman who returned and stayed, who rooted herself in paper, ink, and love. And every night, after the store lights dimmed and the world quieted, Wren and Griffin curled up beside Brielle, reading stories she'd chosen herself, their voices weaving together in the kind of harmony that only comes from knowing you are exactly where you're meant to be. They didn't need more. They had everything: